All right, everybody, we should be getting live and getting going here. So hopefully everybody is getting their notification that I am here and I am on board. And we got a good topic today that I want to discuss. So hopefully you all see that there, and hopefully you can all see me as well. So we'll get going with the topic at hand once people get on board. So we're just going to wait for all you people to sign up as usual. A little bit of a delay here, and then we're going to get into it. So, hey, Steve, seeing how my new day and time goes. So we're just going to give it a minute and see who signs in. And then I'm going to get to the lecture, which is a pretty long one, but it was necessary today. So we need to get all of everything in there. And wow, did that ever just jump? So sorry about the delay, folks, but it's worth it because it lets me know when people are on board. So I'm going to go through a really, really in-depth article with you. I'm going to go through it point by point because it's really important to get it down there and look at what's happening. And hello to everybody out there. And by all means, please let me know you're out there with emoticons and comments. And yeah, so we will definitely be sharing your comments and stuff as we go along, and we'll get in there. And I'm going to get a little bit of help here and there from my editor Perry, who's on board, and he's going to help me as well. So it looks like the new time slot is doing good, folks. We got about double the amount of people that I usually have, so that's a good sign. And I'm far more awake at this time of day than I am at my usual 5 a.m. So hopefully I'll look a lot prettier as well. And although there's only so much you can do with this mug. But yeah, so now here we go, everyone. Hello, everyone from all over the world. And let me get into it. So there's so much misinformation out there about artificial sweeteners, low energy sweeteners. I may refer to them during this article because that's how the research is referred to them. And if you see my book behind me here, Understanding Metabolism, I devote a whole chapter to artificial sweeteners in that book as well. But I'm going to go through one of the most in-depth studies I've ever seen on artificial sweeteners, and it covers every kind of study that's been done and every time a category that's been done. And as you see, it's from the International Journal of Obesity 2016, so relatively recent. Number 40 and the page numbers there. So I'm going to bring this up so you can see it, and I'm going to shrink my big fat head, and then I'm going to get right into the juxt of it. You can comment as we go along, or if you want, wait until the end. That would be great too. So again, greetings to everybody from all over the world, whatever time zone you may be in. And I want to get to this because this is finally going to get some real scoop here, folks. This includes stevia, although I'm not personally a big stevia fan and have a few issues with it. This does encapsulate stevia as well. One of my issues with stevia there, Tamara, is that stevia is a lot of a tree hugger argument that, because it comes from plant, it's better, safer, and all these things than man-made artificial sweeteners, where in fact it's processed in the exact same way. It goes to factories and is processed the exact same way. There's no advantage to it other than playing on people's psychological impact that it's healthier because it comes from a plant. And I'll get into that another time, but that's not the subject of this one. This one is all about this really, really excellent article. But here's how these lies and misinformation get started. Jillian Michaels from The Biggest Loser was quoted as saying, and I put this in green, hopefully you can all see this, let me know if you can't see all this, but she was quoted as saying, artificial sweeteners trick our bodies so that our internal ability to count calories is thrown way off. Well, not only is that statement complete quackery, folks, but it doesn't even make sense. Our bodies don't count calories. Calories is an external outside-in thing. calorie is a measure of a degree of heat that displaces water. Calories have not, our body doesn't measure calories at all and never has. So first of all, our bodies don't count calories. That's how ridiculous that statement was. And if Jillian Michaels actually knew anything about metabolism, even though what she said was wrong, she would phrase it in a way that would be artificial sweeteners trick our bodies and throw off our internal feedback loops that are related to hunger and satiation. That would be the correct way of what she's trying to say, even though she's flat out wrong about that as well. So, but this is what happens, and this is what bothers me, because someone who's that level of celebrity makes a statement on social media, other people pick it up, copy it, share it, agree with it, and it goes round and round the social media circles without anyone checking it out, and it becomes a meme, and then it becomes to be accepted as true, when in fact, it's not true at all. So, and I'm going to get to you if you can, Citizen making a good comment, but if you can just hold off, because there's so much to get through, and I want to be so in depth here. So first of all, a statement by a celebrity doesn't mean it's a fact. And misrepresenting rodent research is typically what follows a ridiculous claim like Jillian Michaels made, all these rat studies, etc. And this is the problem with social media dispensing knowledge that is wildly inaccurate and completely incomplete. And that's a problem. I remember way back when I was first discussing the relevance of artificial sweeteners, and the tree huggers were attacking me, saying how carcinogenic it was, and they were quoting from various rat studies. And so I used their own study. This is back 10, 15 years ago. I used their own study. I called it up, and they were giving rats 400 times their body weight in sweeteners before they saw any kind of adverse health incident. And then, of course, people didn't even connect with that. It was just artificial sweeteners cause cancer, and then they were off and running. So here's what you do. And then Tamara's just saying that artificial sweeteners cause us to crave sugar. I'm going to get to that, Tamara. I'm all over this like a monkey on a cupcake. So we're just going to get into it. Now, keep in mind here that that my comments, the relevant researcher comments below, are in black and they're bolded. My comments and opinion are in red. So for those of you who are new here, and boy, our numbers are high. So I'm glad I changed my times. So again, this article is from the International Journal of Obesity. And this is the reference number, Macmillan Publishing, if you want to look at it. And now I'll let you know also that this original article was over 20 pages and over 20,000 words. So I've removed a lot of the heavy academic stuff and all the things that really, the charting and the collection methods and all the kind of academic stuff that really appeals to other academics who are looking at studies in a critical analysis kind of way to make sure they pass muster in terms of academic standards. I remove all that from these studies, folks, when I present it to you, because it gets really, really confusing to the consumer. I like to get to the heart of the matter. So here's the thing here now. So here's the subject. This is what the article is actually called. And hopefully you're all reading this. I don't see anyone saying that you can't see it. So does low energy sweetener consumption, what they refer to from here on in as LES, I'm going to call it artificial sweetener, folks. Does low energy sweetener consumption affect energy intake? In other words, how much you're going to eat. In other words, the Jillian Michaels that makes you hungrier, and or body weight. And here is a systematic review, including meta-analysis. And you all know how fond I am of meta-analysis, that meta-analysis just takes into concern all other relevant studies of the evidence of human and animal studies. And this is one of the most comprehensive studies I've ever seen on artificial sweetener, if not the most comprehensive, and it's recent as well. So that's very, very good as well. Tamara, sorry, I don't know what you're apologizing for, but there's nothing to apologize here. So let's get into it. Here is the overall hypothesis, and I'm excited about this stuff, folks. So if I start going too quick for you, just tell me to slow the F down, and I will. But there's a lot to get through, so I want to get through it, but I also want to take my time. And Perry's just posting the link there. I'll try to get it up, folks, but I also want to get through this. So the overall hypothesis: by reducing energy density, low energy sweeteners herein as known as LES, might be expected to reduce overall energy intake. In other words, you'll eat less, you'll take in less calories, and to reduce body weight. To assess, and I quote, the totality of the evidence, testing the null hypothesis that artificial sweeteners versus sweetened alternatives and unsweetened alternatives has no effect on energy intake or body weight, we conducted systemic review of the relevant studies in animals and humans consuming energy intake. I appreciate all the nice comments, folks. So the preponderance, and here's their conclusion, and then we're going to get into it. The preponderance of the evidence from all human randomized control trials indicates artificial sweeteners do not increase energy intake. In other words, there's the myth that they make you eat more. All right. So preponderance of the evidence, artificial sweeteners do not increase energy intake or body weight. All right, important, whether compared with caloric or non-caloric, for example, water, and wait till we get near the bottom when they compared artificial sweeteners with water, folks. It's going to blow your mind, and in a good way. So under control conditions, overall, the balance of the evidence indicates that use of artificial sweeteners in place of sugar in children and adults leads to reduced energy intake and reduced body weight, and possibly also when compared with just plain water. That's mind-blowing. So this result is consistent and overwhelming in the research that is well designed with the appropriate controls. Now, they do include other studies that have a contradictory finding, but they also tell you what's wrong with those studies. So again, here is the, I'm just going to copy that and put it in here. Paste it up for you to see. So that's your link there to the article. All right. And then, so there's a big introduction on the type of sweeteners we're talking about. I left a lot of the dialogue in here so you can see it. We'll get to that, Perry. Hold off, buddy. Just showing you that how just comprehensive this study actually was. So again, I bolded what I think I need to read to you guys, and then I'm going to get to all your comments near the end, some great ones already. So after all these, this suggests that consuming artificial sweeteners in place of sugar-sweetened products should reduce overall energy intake, and particularly so for consumption of beverages, the most popular vehicles for artificial sweetener intake. The question also arises whether the presence of artificial sweeteners in beverages affects appetite, as Tamara was saying earlier, that rumor, and energy intake relative to just taking in water instead. So that's really, really a big deal to study, because this is what they were studying because of all the rumor mill out there, and because social media distorts what aren't facts and makes them facts, and distorts the real facts. And then we get into trouble. So good stuff, Perry, that you're following me. I'll post these comments when I'm done, but it's going to take me a while to get done. So until this study, consistent but guarded conclusion that substitution of artificial sweeteners for sugar, especially in beverages, can help reduce overall energy intake, calorie consumption, but that fully convincing evidence for longer-term beneficial effects has been lacking. Our principal aim was, therefore, to bring together the totality of the evidence to test the primary hypothesis that artificial sweetener consumption per se, or as a replacement for caloric sweeteners in foods like sugar, foods and beverages, has no effect on energy intake or body weight outcomes in adults and children. And I'm just going to scroll down here. We included animal studies particularly because findings from a subset of animal studies appear to suggest that consumption of artificial sweeteners might increase the risk of body weight gain, and this is the conclusion. The reason they included the animal studies is so that other researchers couldn't bombard them with yeah buts, and they couldn't get ridiculous statements like Jillian Michaels' celebrity status misrepresenting the animal research. And that's why they included these animal studies, And these animal studies are often used out of context, as we see above and how I started this lecture, as scare tactics and misinformation regarding nutritional reality, and I'll get to that below. But furthermore, let me say, animal studies, and believe me, you know, I've got a graduate education, and one of my master's courses was critical theory, when we had to break down studies over and over again. And one of the first things you learn is that animal studies are used when it would be unethical or logistically impossible to do similar studies on humans. However, when similar human studies are available, then the results of human studies should always trump any contradictory results from animal studies. And that should be just common sense. So like I said before, 15 years ago, when I was first singing the praises of artificial sweeteners, people were talking about the carcinogenic effect on a certain rat study when the rats were given 400 times their body weight in artificial sweeteners. There isn't a human on the planet that can eat that. Materials and methods, I deleted most of this, folks. It's only relevant to other academics. Denise, I appreciate your comment. Thank you. It does take a long time to review all this stuff. And then they're talking about, as you can see here, study selection and data extraction. You can read that if you want. I just wanted to include it to let you know that it's all there. So there's different kinds of animal studies, as we see here. All right, animal studies with compulsory consumption, and then ad libitum, we'll see that. Comparison with human intakes indicates that most of the studies on animals, rats in particular, most of the studies included dose ranges far in excess of the equivalent amounts humans would consume. So there you go already. When they study animals and rats, they use way bigger intakes and amounts as a control. So we already have a problem. This already presents a problem when it comes to making sweeping generalizations and conclusions when you compare all this to human consumption. So that's an important point of mine that I want you to know and grasp, all right? So most of the studies on animals, again, this is their researchers saying this now, all right, are in excess, all right, of the equivalent amounts that humans would consume. And then they study, they show you all these reference range points and all the studies here that they're referring to. The majority of studies, including all of the studies with larger sample sizes, also important, and or longer durations of exposure to artificial sweeteners, also important, reported no statistically significant effects of artificial sweeteners on body weight. 18 of the higher doses diet found statistically significant decreases in body weight. In other words, they lost weight. And in many of these studies, this was reported in association with subsequent reductions in energy intake. In other words, artificial sweeteners, one of the ways you lose body weight is you end up eating less. And we'll get to the whole Tamara's good point when we started about does it increase appetite, does it not, blah, blah, blah. And they switched the variation, the kind of animal study that they looked at, voluntary consumption. You don't need to understand what all this stuff is, folks. I'm just telling you, they're covering all the bases. If you look at the bottom of the Word document that I have open right now, it's 15,000 words. So obviously I'm not going to read that to you. So very, very important. Veronica, in terms of anecdotal evidence, you look at any academic, and I covered this a few lectures back, but you look at the standards for academia, anecdotal evidence never is involved in that. They're looking at things that they can conclude objectively. So I will get to that another time. But for now, we're talking about the logistics of the arguments made against artificial sweeteners and what research studies show is to be the truth, the objective truth, and not the twisted truth and the twisted relevance. So very, very important stuff. So in 4 studies, the effect of artificial sweetener exposure was found to be moderated by other factors such as gender, previous exposure to other kinds of diets, which is important, hormonal status, and genetic proneness to obesity. And these are always going to be important elements of context that we need to consider. But keep in mind, we're still talking about rats here. Okay, so that's important as well. Veronica, I am going to post your comment when I get to the bottom because it is relevant. So It's just not the subject of this particular lecture, but it's relevant. Commentary, and again, everything in black is from the researchers. A large majority of studies of compulsory and voluntary long-term consumption of artificial sweeteners by rodents found that artificial sweeteners does not increase body weight. Only under certain conditions, perhaps, where artificial sweeteners increase the palatability of specific diets was increased body weight observed. In other words, artificial sweeteners added to the animal's feed made the feed taste better, so they ate more of it, and this skewed the final conclusions in some of these specific studies. But I'll show you below why this conclusion cannot be extrapolated to human beings. It's a very different animal. So if you have 4 legs and a tail, then maybe this is more relevant, but I don't think anyone paying attention to this has 4 legs and a tail. If you do, email me after. I'd love to talk to you. So again, what they say here, at higher doses of artificial sweeteners, most studies found either no effect or reduced body weight. So you can see how selective attention to specific studies can skew perception and misrepresent the overall totality of what we call good research, solid academic research. And solid academic research, to Veronica's point, never allows anecdotal evidence. Anecdotal evidence can be used to start research, but it's never used within research, and that's very, very important as well. So things to consider there. So the relevance from rat studies to usual human eating patterns remains unclear, and specific hypotheses generated from such animal studies have yet to be tested directly in controlled studies with humans. And of course, this is absolutely an important point to consider. So until such tests have been conducted, continued speculation based on the results of these animal studies about the impact of artificial sweetener use by people would seem unwarranted. And that's what you need to know. If all these tree huggers and Jillian Michaels try to use a rat study to reinforce something that's actually been studied in humans, then you can dismiss that and goes away. And that's very, very important as well. So Jason's just making a comment about stevia, kind of backing me up what I said, because it's from a plant and natural, it's supposed to be healthier, but cocaine comes from a plant as well. So there you go. But okay, so observational studies in humans. So this is where we start wringing our hands together and getting into it, right? So these are the studies in humans. And these studies will always matter more. So now here's a whole bunch of study selection and data extraction so that you can see that this is really, really worthy academic standard stuff. It's too bad we're losing viewers because this is really, really important stuff. But because it doesn't have the sexy to it, people's attention span tends to drift. And that's too bad because there's really good, important conclusions coming. So, and then you see they're talking about the results. I'm going to skip through. You could read all of this, folks, later if you want. So I'm just going to show you how well done it was. Like I said, over 20,000 words. And then now we're in the commentary section. As you can see, I'm on page 8 already. So if I had to read this to you, there'd be nobody left. So here we go. The results from prospective studies of artificial sweeteners, body weight, and obesity seem to be inconsistent. Taken together, though, there is little evidence from these studies to conclude that artificial sweeteners increase the risk of body weight gain or obesity. Little evidence to make such a statement, all right? This is important stuff. And again, when you start listening to people arguing the opposite about artificial sweeteners, refer them to this webinar, refer them to my book behind me, Understanding Metabolism, where I talk to actual biochemists and endocrinologists, but we'll get to that at the end of this. So we categorize the extracted data into 5 types of comparisons: artificial sweeteners versus sugar, artificial sweeteners versus unsweetened products, artificial sweeteners versus water, artificial sweeteners versus nothing, and artificial sweeteners in capsules versus placebo capsules. This one I found really fascinating, folks, because if you're taking an artificial sweetener in a capsule, you're not really tasting it, you're just swallowing it. And if you do that compared to a placebo, where neither of you can taste the sweetness, then you should have equal results. But you'll be fascinated what happened, because I know I was blown away by it. So we conducted meta-analysis, derived summary estimates of differences in cumulative energy intake separately for each of these types of comparisons. So I'm going to go through them with you. The cumulative results: energy intake was reduced with consumption of artificial sweeteners versus sugar preloads in adults and in children. Again, you use artificial sweetener, you tend to take in less calories. So this whole mythology building that artificial sweeteners gives you a taste for sweetness and you're going to be like a heroin addict and you're going to want more and you're going to eat more and you know, blah, 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 blah. So very, very important stuff. So next. So artificial sweeteners in capsules. Given in capsules compared with placebo, capsules still tended to reduce energy intake. Now that one, Perry, you want to copy this? I'm going to post it in a while. I'll post it right now. But this is wickedly fascinating. If you understand academia, folks, and you understand the arguments being made here, then this is wildly, wildly fascinating stuff. Basically, they're saying even putting artificial sweeteners in a capsule so your taste buds aren't lit up by it, compared to placebo capsules, and it still ended up in blind tests that people ended up taking in less calories. So there's something else going on here in terms of the biochemistry of it once it gets to your gut. It's not just about the enhanced sweetness of taste. So very, very important stuff. And that one really blows my mind. I just find that one, as someone who thinks I'm pretty well read, that one just really, really blew my mind in terms of relevance. So it's not just what happens in the mouth. It's not just the orgasm in the mouth. It's what happens in the biochemistry in the gut. So really important stuff. Now here's their commentary. Taken together, these results show that consumption of artificial sweeteners in place of sugars is consistently found to reduce short-term energy intake. Bingo. That's one of my favorite words when a point has been made, like slam dunk, exclamation point. So all these tree huggers out there, oh, sugar's a natural source of blah, 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 and, you know, chemicals and blah, blah, blah. What we see here is sort of a defeat of that argument. So it's important that, you know, that we understand relevance in relevance's terms and not in the terms we want it to be. So contrary to the concern, here we go, contrary to the concern that artificial sweetener might increase intakes acutely because of stimulation of subsequent energy intake by sweetness or via other mechanisms, energy intake did not differ for artificial sweetener versus water, artificial sweetener versus unsweetened product, or artificial sweetener versus nothing. Boom. That one is also huge, and I'll get to that as well. So in all but 4 of these studies, of these particular kinds of studies that they moved on to, participants were specifically recruited were overweight or obese participants. In 2 studies, the research was undertaken in the context of a weight loss program as well, which is relevant to the fitness realm, which is why I included it here. So the artificial sweetener group had the lowest absolute values for total change in energy intake, energy consumption, calorie level, compared with either sugar or water. This is huge, folks. In other words, the group that took in the artificial sweeteners had the lowest absolute values for totally changing, all right, how much energy, calorie consumption they were taking in, all right, compared with groups that had sugar or just water. So really, really, really important stuff, and I'm going to get to that as well. So if you don't find this fascinating, folks, you're missing the point, because if you don't understand real academic objective findings, then you're always going to be a sucker for the next thing that comes down the pike, or you're going to be a sucker for celebrity nonsense like what I started this with the Jillian Michaels quote. And then another 4 studies specifically recruited overweight and obese participants, carried out the interventions in the context of a weight loss program, very relevant to the fitness realm, right? In all comparisons, the artificial sweetener intervention produced the smallest absolute gain in weight or the largest absolute loss of body weight when compared with sugar or water. In other words, of the group of people who kept eating the way they ate and gained weight, the people who used artificial sweeteners gained the less weight, and of the people who lost the most weight, the most amount of body weight was lost to the people who ate artificial sweeteners. So another win-win in terms of the advantage that artificial sweeteners offer. So outside academic circles, this is what you need to know, and this is what most people want to know. And that's very, very important stuff. In 6 comparisons of over 1,200 participants, almost 1,300 participants, in terms of anthropometric differences favoring artificial sweeteners were reportedly to be statistically significant. Statistically significant. In other words, the changes in body structure from choosing artificial sweeteners, all right, in terms of doing measurements around your waist, et cetera, favors using artificial sweeteners as well. Boom. All right, so that's very important as well. So comments are coming in fast and furious, folks. I hope you stay around for the comments because I'm getting there. As you can see, if I read all this to you, I'm on page 10, and I deleted 10,000 words. So, and now they're getting the meta-analysis. In the random effects model, we found a relative body weight loss in adults using artificial sweeteners compared with sugar-sweetened products. Again, a loss of body weight by switching to artificial sweeteners. The overall random effects model of adult and child studies combined also found participants who consumed low-energy sweeteners compared with sugar-sweetened products showed relative reductions in body weight. Boom. That's another big / fancy bingo. I'm going to post that up there because I think it's important. So you can see where all this is trending. So that's a really, really important thing. Now, they talk a little bit about limitations of those studies, but they explain them well. You can read all that if you're interested. Again, I include all that for the sake of objectivity, but I want to get to the conclusion after the conclusion. What they're arguing here, folks, and you see, references there, 147, 157. They're even including a critical analysis of other studies, and that's really important in terms of academic standards. So the studies comparing artificial sweeteners to unsweetened products, water or nothing at all, suggest that exposure to sweetness itself is not a significant stimulus for later energy intake. In other words, that argument that, the taste of artificial sweetener is going to make you hungry and it's going to make you want to eat more. Well, what they're saying here, studies comparing artificial sweeteners to unsweetened products, water or nothing at all, suggests that exposure to sweetness itself is not a significant stimulus for eating more later or later energy intake. And this is important because it refutes all that tree hugger nonsense that somehow you're going to eat more if you use artificial sweeteners. Jillian Michaels' comment above reflecting that. So these studies reduce the possibility that artificial sweeteners might increase appetite via stimulation of sweet taste receptors in the gastrointestinal tract. This is why I found swallowing artificial sweeteners in capsules so fascinating, because it goes right to the gastrointestinal tract and avoids the sweetness of the mouth. But what are the studies saying here? The studies are saying that it reduces the possibility that artificial sweeteners will increase appetite because of stimulation of sweet taste receptors in the gastrointestinal tract. Boom. This is, again, what Jillian Michaels was trying to argue when she said it upsets the way your body counts calories, even though that statement itself is absolutely ridiculous. It's not even, I would say, kindergarten, but it doesn't even pass that level of muster. So once again, this refutes the arguments of the misinformed in this industry about how artificial sweeteners are going to make you eat more, crave more, better to go with, unsweetened stuff that has no taste, and again, these studies were about that. They compared artificial sweeteners to sweetness, to non-sweetened items, and to just water. And again, they found it has no effect on that. So very, very important as well. So artificial sweeteners appear to be generally weak stimulus for gut sensing in humans. Really important stuff, because that's not the same as sugar. Sugars aren't weak stimulus to gut insulinogenic hormones, and I'm going to get to that as well. So this conclusion is supported by a large number of studies reporting only limited effects of various artificial sweeteners on glycemic, insulinemic, and gut hormone responses. That's a booyah, folks, if you understand what I'm talking about here. So this means that using artificial sweeteners is far less likely to produce things like rebound hypoglycemia and other typical hunger-inducing consequences of its disaccharide counterparts like sucrose. In other words, it's a myth that if you drink Diet Coke over regular Coke, you're going to want to go out and eat more sweet. Whereas if you drink regular Coke, you're likely to experience rebound hypoglycemia and either keep drinking more Coke or eat more food at your next meal. This is really important stuff, so we're going to get to that. So it's worth noting that consistent with the suppressive effect on the energy intake, so using artificial sweeteners means you take in less energy, which is what dieting properly is all about, relative deficits. So it's worth noting that consistent with a suppressive effect on energy intake of aspartame in capsules, repeated consumption of aspartame in capsules led to a 1.1 kilogram greater body weight loss in young adults placed on energy-restricted diet than did placebo capsules. So even when taking in artificial sweeteners in capsules where you can't taste the sweet and it goes right to your gut versus a placebo effect, there was still substantially more weight loss taking in the artificial sweetener, in particular aspartame. Now, I was always a fan of aspartame since it's composed of easily biorecognizable amino acid, aspartic acid, as its main component. And unless someone has PKU, it's really a tragedy that aspartame got such a bad rap and is harder to find now because it is really quite beneficial. So very, very important. This stuff gets me excited, but I'm a geek. And we know from one of the reasons here why there may have been, even though they were taken in capsules, one of the reasons why there may have been a greater weight loss, body weight loss, taking in aspartame is because aspartic acid plays a vital role in the biosynthesis of protein in the body, and that's a good thing. So very, very important study. So all right. In sum, the results of these short-term studies comprise a large body of evidence showing that consumption of artificial sweeteners in place of sugar reduces overall energy intake acutely, all right, substantially, with no indication that artificial sweeteners increase appetite. No indication that artificial sweeteners increase appetite. So let's read that part again. So not only do you take in less overall calories by using artificial sweeteners, but there's no indication that doing that increases your appetite. So you get a 1-2 benefit. All right. And then there's some other studies they talk about. And the results here are always consistent in all cases. So you see I highlighted the word all of the next level of studying, next level of type of academic studying. In all cases, the use of artificial sweeteners led to a relative reduction in energy intake and a greater loss of body weight. Notably, as there was not one single example of sustained exposure intervention trial where artificial sweetener use led to a relative increase in energy intake or body weight. In other words, that hypothesis just isn't true. It just isn't true that if you take in artificial sweetener on a regular basis, you're going to take in more calories because you're tricking your body, like Jillian Michael said, or you're going to gain weight. I've been using artificial sweeteners since they came out, and that's part of an element of sound weight control. Just makes sense. So these two above points mean the longer you use it, the better it's going to be for weight control. So this was supported, here back to the researchers, this was supported qualitatively by the results of meta-analysis of body weight change indicating lower relative body weight in the artificial sweetener intervention studies. So how many times do I need to keep saying it? Outcomes are similar in studies with children and adults, following a similar pattern, whether or not the studies were blind or double blind, etc. So consumption of artificial sweetener beverages also reduce body weight relative to consumption of water. Huge here, all right? Consumption of artificial sweetened beverages also reduce body weight relative to consumption of water. This one's really important, especially for food fear mongers out there. who feel guilty for drinking sugar-free pop and soda. Meantime, consuming sugar-free, artificially sweetened carbonated drinks may actually work better for you than just straight water. So isn't that awesome? So all this guilt, I get clients who will write me, they're new with me, and they'll write me and they'll say, oh, I feel guilty. I'm drinking too much diet pop. Well, let me see here. I have 2 Venti coffees in the morning with 2 pink sweeteners in each. And then after dinner, I have 16 to 20 ounces of diet Dr. Pepper. And then a couple hours after that, I have another 16 ounces of Diet Coke. I've been doing that for years and years and years. And this is part of the overall relative calorie deficit that fits into the cycle diet. So in addition to the studies meeting the criteria for inclusion, there's also different kinds of studies that they want to include here to be comprehensive. Artificial sweeteners were a component of a mixed or more complex diet lifestyle information. I'm going to get to your comments real soon, folks. I'm almost done here. The results were consistent with the pure artificial sweetener interventions, and that is treatments that include artificial sweeteners are associated with reductions or no change in energy intake or body weight. No example was found where an intervention specifically included artificial sweeteners led to a relative increase in energy intake or body weight. So here you go, all these memes online and in social media that create false truths and false evidence. There you go. So this is huge. Artificial sweeteners make a huge difference in weight control, and I would add make a difference when trying to optimize metabolism as well because of these specific effects. Contrast the conclusions of these well-designed human studies with all the confounding and contradictory rat studies mentioned earlier. So very important stuff. Taken at face value, these results show the consumption of artificial sweeteners compared with sugar leads to either no change or a relative reduction in energy intake and energy balance. More unexpectedly, however, artificial sweetener also led to reductions in body weight relative to water. So I'm going to drink water because I feel guilty because I'm drinking too many artificial sweeteners. Well, you might actually start eating more because you're drinking water instead of artificial sweeteners. Now, there's something about the sweetness that I want to get to here. Oh, I see a lot of Dr. Pepper fans like me. Good to know. So body weight differences were the greatest in the longest study, which lasted 40 months. I also agree with that. The longer you do something good, the better that good is going to do. That just makes sense, right? Let me say that again because I sounded pretty intelligent there. The longer you do something good, the longer that good is going to do for you. So that's very important. And again, in this next level of study, they found no evidence that gender or body weight status affected the outcome, indicating that the effects of consuming artificial sweeteners versus sugar sweetener are general rather than specific to certain groups of individuals. And this runs counter to some of the fitness and diet industry nonsense out there that passes for legit information. So I'm going to skip down because I want to get through. They did another table analysis that the weight of the evidence indicates decreased energy intake and decreased body weight with consumption of artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners do not appear to increase energy intake in human intervention studies, tend to lead to a relative decrease in body weight, even compared with the consumption of water in the groups tested. Really, really important stuff. So very, very important. These findings are consistently contrary to the concern that has been raised by some authors that consumption of artificial sweeteners can increase the risk of becoming overweight and obese. The results in favor of a benefit of artificial sweetener use in body weight management come primarily from a substantial number of short-term and sustained intervention studies testing human participants, which can reasonably be said to rank above observational studies and animal studies as sources of evidence for informing healthcare decisions, including dietary recommendations. So there you go. Once again, this requires substantial exclamation points. Human studies should always rank above animal studies, all things being equal. So really important. In any case, close examination, totality of the evidence, including that from all these studies, does not contradict the conclusion that artificial sweetener use is helpful or at least neutral with respect to body weight control. Systematic reviews, again, I'm going to skip through this because there's another one I want to get to. The authors nevertheless reached similar conclusions. They just followed some other authors that took studies in a different direction. And these other authors state substituting low-calorie sweetener options for regular caloric versions results in modest body weight loss and can be a useful dietary tool to improve compliance with body weight loss, body weight maintenance plans. So pooled analysis of the largest 3 studies showed a relative body weight reduction for people consuming artificial sweeteners. The problem with me posting these as comments is when people watch them later on my YouTube channel, they're not going to know what the hell LES is, but it just means low energy sweeteners. Evidence from a large majority of animal studies also favors reduced energy intake and reduced body weight gain and no effect of low energy sweeteners. So I want to get to human intervention studies. Animal studies did not mimic the use of artificial sweeteners by humans. Takes a different course of action. Again, this is all here for you guys to read. But I want to get to the part about the sweetness element. So on the other hand, evidence from studies of sensory-specific satiety show that acute exposure to sweetness decreases subsequent desire for the same or other sweet relative to non-sweetened items. So that's really, really important there. So evidence from studies of sensory-specific satiety show that acute exposure to sweetness decreases subsequent desire for the same or other sweet. This is really, really important stuff because of what it talks about, folks. So I'm going to post that there for you to see. And I'm almost to the comment section. But this is really, really important stuff. This is an important factor in diet control and energy intake. Consistent with this, participants in the CHOICE trial receiving artificial sweetened beverages specifically reduced consumption of dessert items relative to those receiving water. How important is this? Having some sweetness in a beverage, in other words, is likely to quell that penchant for sweetness, right? Like that I have, because I'm a sweet tooth, self-admitted, self-confessed, hi, my name is Scott and I'm a sweet tooth kind of thing. And this actually shows that rather than stimulating your appetite for more food, it satisfies your sensory desire for sweetness, making you less likely to eat more sweets down the road. Whereas if you took in water, all right, so consistent, all right, I'm just going to highlight this for you. Participants, the trial receiving artificial sweetened beverages specifically reduced consumption of dessert items relative to those who drank water. So someone switches to water because they think they're making a better choice for their diet, but they have a sweet tooth. Then what happens is that sweet tooth is not being satiated in any way, shape, or form. They end up blowing their diet on really calorie-dense foods when they could have controlled it with artificially sweetened drinks. This is good stuff, folks. This is like rock and roll kind of stuff. It's too bad we've lost so many viewers, but I get that people don't like academia. But that's the problem, because they'll go out and listen to some pinhead or some bikini bunny who won a contest who says, I don't have artificial sweeteners, and they think that they're getting something relevant. But I'm trying to give you the A to Z on this, folks. So one possible interpretation for this satiety thing is that access to artificial sweeteners satisfies a pre-existing desire for sweetness rather than promoting it. Wow, that's huge. Common sense until experts pervert it and make it not common sense. So let's think of that. Think about that for a moment. All right. And what that actually says, and that's important. So I'm posting it. So one possible interpretation is that access to artificial sweeteners, especially in beverages, satisfies a pre-existing desire for sweetness rather than promoting it. And I know it sure does for me, because I have so many clients who write me, and a lot of you are going to resonate with this. What's their biggest issue? Eating at night. And really what I do is I save my carbonated diet drinks, my Dr. Pepper and my Diet Coke, for night, because that's when I'm more likely to crave sweetness. But I have these two things and boom, non-issue. Whereas other people trying to follow water or whatever, no wonder they eat at night, because they're never satisfying that desire for sweet that they've evolved to know and want and like. So very, very important stuff. So And again, a further result is that artificial sweeteners consumed in capsules either had no effect or reduced energy intake, short-term intervention studies. This argues against the stimulation of gut receptors as a route by which artificial sweeteners could contribute to increased energy intake and body weight. So do you understand what they're saying here, folks? This is important. And I hope you guys are hitting the share button on this. I know it's a little late for me to be saying that, but my God, I hope you're hitting share, heart. Because this is important. It goes against the tree hugger nonsense that this industry's become. What they're saying here is that even if you took artificial sweeteners in a capsule, all right, it has no effect on gut receptors to stimulate you wanting to eat more, which is the argument made, like Jillian Michaels made at the beginning of this, that it throws off your body's way of counting calories, even though bodies don't count calories. So I'm going to scroll down. I didn't realize I was talking so much. I'm going to, yeah, because we're running out of time. So in the conclusion, okay, so I'm just going to jump to the conclusion, folks. We found a considerable weight of evidence in favor of consumption of artificial sweeteners in place of sugar as helpful in reducing relative energy intake and body weight, with no evidence, I'll say it again, no evidence from the many acute and sustained intervention studies in humans that artificial sweeteners increases energy intake. No evidence. Low-calorie sweeteners do not lead you to eating more. So if drinking black coffee makes you gag and you love your sweeteners, have them. All right. I don't know why people continue to think that eating right is some test of survival will where you're going to eat straw and drink water, and that's the only way to get there is to be a martyr and all those other things. Furthermore, the effects of artificial sweetened beverages on body weight also appear neutral relative to water. In other words, no difference. If you drink Diet Dr. Pepper like I do and Andy does, or you drink water, actually, they're relatively similar, or as you see here, even beneficial effects of artificially sweetened drinks there. And I'm going to post that as well. So now people might be saying, oh boy, Scott's really trying to get people to drink the Kool-Aid here. Scott's really promoting blah, blah, blah up here. But I'm quoting to you from one of the most comprehensive studies ever made on artificial sweeteners. So this isn't me just, hitting my pom-poms. This is the actual presentation of a review. Now they do talk about here, and I want to skip this, the counter argument, but they also disprove it right there. So, yeah, I'm going to skip that. But because here's the important thing, folks, and this is what I really want you to see. People really need to start educating themselves, because if you don't, you're going to fall for all the crap that's out there, and it's really nonsensical. So I want you to look at the number of references below and tell me that this study is not comprehensive in scope, one of the most comprehensive I've ever seen. I'm going to scroll through now. Below is 205 references, all right? Therefore, the above conclusions shouldn't be considered controversial or subject to opinion. They covered all of it. So look at this. I'm just going to go real slow. I want you to see all this, right? And then I'm going to get to your comments, because there were some really good comments there, and we're going to discuss this, folks. This is exactly how I used to teach university. Do some presentation, make the argument, and then discuss. All right. But you have to see how the argument was being made. And that's what's important here. Look at the list of references, folks. Look at them. All right. Now I'm going to scroll just to get to the bottom of it. So I included this deliberately so that the tree huggers and people out there, because there's something I can't get to that happened last night on one of my Facebook posts that I'd love to get to show how people are so biased in their minds and they don't even realize they are. But look at this. I'm on reference number 170s, all right, 180s, all right, references in the 190s, 205 references, folks, from this academic article. It doesn't get much better than that, all right? So that's really, really important, and it's one of the best articles I've read that I've presented to you guys in a long, long time. So really, really important stuff. And now I just want to get to your comments, because, wow, there was some really, really good comments. So I'm going to go right back to the bottom. For those of you who are still with me, I've lost about half of you, but Another problem with the internet, with people who don't have the patience, who say they want to learn, and they have the attention span of a gnat, you know, and then they'll write me with the same questions I just answered 50 times. You know, but that's the internet. You know, people have a 5-minute attention span, and if it's not sexy, then they disappear. And that's the problem, because the real truth isn't sexy. This is the hard stuff. This is the real truth. So, you know, what you should swallow this real truth down is a good dose of Splenda or Equal. So Tamara, I think I was going to share those comments, but I think I've already covered that when you said that you also heard, you know, that artificial sweeteners cause us to crave sugar. Actually, it does away with your craving for sugar. It helps quell your craving for sugar. So hopefully, you know, I explained that to you. Once again, just to show, Perry's just keeping track on me, keeping me honest. Here's a link to the actual study. Very, very important stuff. Another comment by Perry. I don't know. I've never looked into this, but Jillian Michaels has an impressive cadre of clients who've lost weight and kept it off, or does she? Yeah. I mean, who cares? It certainly wasn't because of that approach. You know. Now here's another one. I want you to know. The preponderance of the evidence from all human randomized control studies indicates artificial sweeteners do not increase energy intake or body weight, whether compared with caloric or non-caloric, as in water, control conditions. Overall, balance of the evidence indicates artificial sweeteners in place of sugar in children and adults leads to less calorie intake and decreased body weight, and possibly also when compared with water. That water one is huge, folks. That's big. So very, very important stuff. Veronica just wrote earlier, I think this is the one you wanted me to get to, Veronica. What about anecdotal evidence? Anecdotal evidence has no place in academic environment. Anecdotal evidence can lead to a desire for research, but it's never part of the research. And I covered that in a previous webinar. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll find it in one of those. So very, very important stuff. Obviously, you're listing stuff here that wasn't the subject of this particular webinar, Veronica. Clients who suffer artificial sweetener migraines, limb swelling, lymph nodes. Well, I don't know about any of that stuff, but if there is that kind of response, as there was with aspartame, the people who have a problem with aspartame have a PKU, which is an allergy to phenylalanine, which is easy to diagnose, but has nothing to do with the overall artificial sweetener in general. I balk at those kind of general kinds of conclusions, because it's not really a one item cause and effect. Oftentimes people who are having these kinds of reactions are having them to any number of reasons and multiple reasons that could be going on. So it's very, very important. So good stuff. Yeah, you know, I always found when I was younger, even before I knew what a diet was, I drank diet drinks because I found that sugary drinks made me want to drink more. So isn't that funny? I got a sort of rebound hypoglycemic reaction from drinking regular pop, and I always chose diet pop, even if I was having burger and fries. It just tasted better to me. Yeah, and that was weird even then. So, and then Perry is just, as I asked him to, you know, quoting some of the stuff in the study, because the study won't let me do that. So, yeah, Citizen, I'm not going to get into that comment. I'm not going to get into the politics of the politics. It just doesn't interest me. I'm trying to help people with the realities of diet and nutrition and weight control. So, Jack's just, yeah, good point, Jack. I mean, yeah, this is what we call anecdotal evidence. One of my favorite things to have with my dinner meal is a diet root beer. Keeps it easy, no calories, no insulin spike. Great to throw in once in a while, have something different. Yeah. Sure. Once in a while, every day, whatever, doesn't really matter. So, Kimberly's saying she lost 73 pounds, kept it off for 8 years, and regularly use artificial sweeteners. Tend to grab a diet pop instead of a sweet. Works great for me and makes diet easy to adhere to. Boom. there you go, Kimberly, and congrats on losing 73 pounds. That is not easy, and keeping it off means you're a member of this able group anytime you want to be, because I'm all about sustainable weight loss, and I'm not really about 12-week transformations. They don't mean anything to me. So good for you. Good for you. I'm going to post that again. Very good. Any questions? Let me just scroll up. Boy, you guys were really yeah, it's just, it's too bad, Leanne, but that's the reality. People who can't understand research and science believe anything and anyone. And it's not just that they don't understand it, Leanne, it's they have no patience for it. They say they want the answers, and I try to deliver the answers, and I commit over an hour and a whole week to doing the actual bringing together the research in a way that will cut through the academic stuff and tell them what they need to know, and they still can't hold on for an hour, and yet they're desperate for answers and please help. And it's like, really, this is your level of commitment? Like 15 minutes, and then, some people may have left for other legitimate reasons, but that I see it all the time. So very, very important. So, and then Veronica's just reiterating my point that most of her following wouldn't listen because it's too much academia here. And that's the problem, because sometimes the answers aren't the sexy stuff that marketers want you to listen to and pay attention to, that they sexy up for you, have a Cliff Bar and all this other stuff. And you want to get to the heart of the matter, and you want to get to it and present it to them and tell them the truth. And you know what? It's like Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. So a lot of people don't want the truth. They want their version of it. And that's too bad, because then they start following people who are all about the marketing, and they're all about saying, hey, these people believe in this crap. Well, I'll just be their leader and I'll just give them more of it. So it's very, very important. So Nicola, I don't know what the abs army means, but okay. Appreciate it. Always glad when I can reach people out there. So, and then Perry's just posting about PKU. Anybody who's going to talk about artificial sweeteners and aspartame better know what PKU is. And if they don't, then that's just ridiculous. So very, very important stuff there. So, and you know what, Tamara? Let me just get Andy's comment in here. I still drink Diet Pop on cheat days, go to Five Guys, double bacon cheeseburger, large fries, and a Diet Coke. Yeah, I can understand that. And then Tamara, what you're saying, people are too lazy to read and research, but it's not just that, Tamara. I just brought them the reading and the research, and they still can't hang on. They still can't listen. It's still, oh, you need more than 15 minutes of my time? Oh, wow, I really want the answers, but that's too much to ask. So it just boggles my mind, the level of laziness. It's like I did the research and the reading for them, and I encapsulated it in what they needed to know. So very, very important. Yeah, and then Shasta is just saying, and there's a lot of that. People also want info that fits their bias. I did a post last night that's reflective of that, and I'm going to get to that in another video because it deserves more attention. But that's very, very important as well. And Ricardo, at the beginning, I talked about stevia. Stevia is okay. It's not. There's no advantage to it. I will choose. I think it tastes like ass myself, but not that that just I don't like it. But it has no advantage, so I prefer the taste that light up my taste buds more. And being a sweet tooth, it's all good. So in the end, folks, what we want to get to now, if you want to see the actual chapter in my book, Understanding Metabolism, for those of you who are still here. All right, that's my book, Understanding Metabolism. There's a whole chapter on artificial sweeteners and the reality of it. And no, it doesn't cause an insulin spike. As we saw, I showed you the research in there that showed that it has a very low level effect on gut insulinogenic and glycemic responses. So it's even better for you than people realize. So my book, Understanding Metabolism, talk a lot about that as well. So very important stuff, and that was a lot of reading for me to get through in terms of bringing this to you. I'm glad the numbers are up at this time of day, so I might keep it to this time of day or try a few hours later next week. Obviously, people prefer afternoon or evening, so that's good. Andy's just saying Splenda is his go-to, mine too. So Carol's just saying she needs to see if she's got Understanding Metabolism in her library. If you don't, you really want to get it and then get Beyond Metabolism after that, I think. Well, thank you, Pamela. Pamela's just saying Understanding Metabolism, a good book. Well, thank you. And then Shaster's again. Well, the knowledge that I'm bringing you wasn't really my knowledge, it was my opinion, but I found the research obviously that gave the A to Z relevance and truth there. So very, very important stuff. And yeah, so Alex has just been listening to my podcasts. I appreciate that, Alex. Glad you like them. So very, very good. So, and Aussie people, I guess you like this time of day, so that's good. I might do a few hours later and try that for the people here in the North American continent. But yeah, so yeah, I said that, Sylvia. Sorry about that, but yeah, I don't like the taste of stevia. So I actually like the taste of that other thing better. So Sean, appreciate the comments, folks. And yeah, by all means, Debbie, you'll want to read Understanding Metabolism. I don't know if you can see the books behind me, but there's also the anti-diet approach, and there's also Beyond Metabolism. You'll want to read that as well. They're meant to go together. And there's a few other ones. So, and you can get them, unless you want a hard copy, get them at my website as ebooks, or you can get hard copies on Amazon. So, very, very important stuff there. So, yeah. So Perry, that's Perry just posted the link if you want to go to my website and see what's there. So great. So that's the truth and nothing but the truth about artificial sweeteners, folks. And hopefully now when you hear people trying to tell you and whoa about artificial sweeteners, it's funny because this just reminded me about a story. I remember, I forget where I was traveling. I was in a Starbucks and I was putting my pink sweeteners in my coffee, and someone came up to me and said, "I can't believe you actually use that crap." I said, "Pardon me?" "Well, you look like you're someone who takes care of yourself." And I said, "Well, I'd like to think so. And you're putting that crap in your coffee?" It's just, yeah, okay, I want to have this conversation now. You know, so it's really, really, well, Haley has a good question, you know, which talk about the amount of intake. Well, my particular intake doesn't really matter, but intake in general, the thing there, what all these studies showed is it really was irrelevant. I mean, in terms of, you know, even if you took it in instead of water, it seemed to be irrelevant. Now, I would say if you're getting to the point of ridiculousness and you're dumping, you know, Splenda in your water every day and just, you know, drinking it endlessly, then too much of any good thing is not a good thing, right? So that's important stuff to think about as well. So Alex is just asking me what book I recommend for competitors looking to repair metabolic adaptations. Well, Understanding Metabolism for sure. I also wrote a book, Alex, called Metabolic Damage and the Dangers of Dieting. You can find that as an ebook in all my books. It's not really, you know, this whole repair metabolic this really pisses me off too, because people are cashing in on that know nothing about metabolism at all. It's just the latest buzzword. Oh, we're going to fix your metabolism. No, if you're a competitor coach, you likely caused the damage to begin with. And the only thing that fixes it is time. I talked about this in advance before. So, yeah. And Haley, you're right. Moderation in terms of artificial sweetener, like any kind of indulgence, right? Moderation is key. So with that, folks, that's a little bit over my time. So hopefully you benefited from this comprehensive research, comprehensive study. I sure was fascinated by the having the artificial sweeteners in capsules, and it still had an effect. That really still hits me, and I'm a researcher. So very, very important stuff. So hopefully you hit your share button. I was a little late in asking you to do so. Spread the word. People can find this after the fact. They can find it on my YouTube channel later on as well. But that is the straight scoop on how artificial sweeteners affect energy intake, calorie consumption, and body weight, and it's all plus, plus, plus. So thanks, folks. And I'm going to do this time, same bat channel next week, because this seemed to work. And I'll bring you some subject matter that I think should be of interest to you, and we'll take it from there. So thank you all for coming. Shed your emoticons across the screen. I can't see them. Hit your share button. Let us know what you think, and I will see all of you next week.